everyone, and very much welcome to the Holland Fintech Meetup in March. We're very much looking forward to having you here on this cold and winterish day. At least I had to go straight into the wind with snowflakes all over me to get here. So I'm glad you all made it in any case, despite of traffic and of course other planning. My name is Don Ginsel, I'm CEO of Holland Fintech, and I'll tell you a bit about what we do, how we do it, and of course what we aim to do here today, because we really like to see if we can get some good knowledge exchange going here this afternoon. And to be able to do that well, I hope for a very interactive audience. So please, all of you, ask questions, speak up, and let me know if there's anything that you need in the meanwhile. Because I think the more interactive we can make it, I think the more you can take out of it, and I think the more we can learn from each other, especially along the way. We've got a really nice program. I think I've got a. Turn it on. Yeah, so here we got the program. I'll do a brief market update like we do every meetup. I basically look back at the last month. What were the highlights of the news? Can we pick up on some of the bigger trends to hopefully highlight you, make it easy for you to actually digest some of the developments in the market? Then we'll hear from Shiraiza, sorry, I have to pronounce it properly, CFO at EMS, our very kind host for today. I'd like to start with a very warm applause for hosting us here. Look forward to hear from EMS. Then we'll get a speech by Joris on how to connect your operational integrity register, diving a bit more into the compliance side of ERM. Then we'll do a Kahoot quiz, which is what, if you've been to our previous meetups, is a brief quiz where you'll be challenged on your knowledge about fintech. Just a tip, if you pay a bit of attention at the beginning, you'll probably get quite most of the answers right. Then we get a pitch by Giel Jansen from Payhawk and Jesse Jonker from SBR Nexus, together with Jos Evelens. So we're very much looking forward to all these different perspectives. We've themed what we've done actually this year for the first time is actually we didn't just want to do general meetups where sort of random between payments, insurance, investing, all kinds of companies will be coming at the same time. We tried to theme it a bit because we could actually dive then a bit deeper into the subject matter and hopefully give you a bit more perspective on sort of a zoom-in part of the fintech space. As generally, if you talk about fintech, you basically talk about the world these days because everything is digital transactions. And you could go from travel to shopping online, to identity, to security. It's a very wide space. And of course, all these areas develop slightly differently. So we hope to be able to zoom in a little bit there on the different elements and give you a bit more insight into what's going on. That's it. And of course, we'll close off with some drinks and hopefully be able to talk to all of you later on. EMS first, yes. Looking forward to hear a little bit more about the kind welcome here and a bit about EMS.
So I can see the stairs is full, and I even see people sitting in the back upstairs.
Yeah, can you see it? Maybe we can make some place here, some space downstairs.
We also have a television upstairs.
Oh, you can see the screen? Okay.
We have two screens. So guys, I'm very happy to welcome all of you today at the European Merchant Services. I think it's been a long while since the Holland Fintech Meetup was organized at EMS. I did hear that it was almost 5 years ago that you guys were here for the last time. So just out of curiosity, how many of you had heard of EMS before signing up for this event?
Most of colleagues?
I also see some people that are not colleagues, so it's kind of a good representation. But some of you might know some examples of payment processing that EMS does is the Dutch Grand Prix. We are the preferred supplier there. Both in the Netherlands as in Belgium, we are the biggest supplier of public transport, where we're processing the payment transactions. We have been in the Netherlands now for over 25 years. We are servicing our 35,000 plus merchants from here. Our head office is here in Amsterdam. We work together with 50 plus partners, and these partners we mainly use for payment processing across Europe. And we have a point of sale and an e-commerce solution. And that's in a nutshell what EMS does. So you're sitting here in our head office, and the head office usually we have around 150 employees working from Amsterdam. That's it.
Thanks.
I'm happy to have you all here.
Yeah, no, thank you indeed for having us here. I just want to ask one question before we start with the applause. Because I think, let's say there's quite a lot of differences in payment processing, right? So I think generally everyone might think about Adyen, for example, or can you maybe specify a little bit how you would see yourself in that landscape?
In that landscape. I would typically classify EMS as a very reliable and solid player when it comes to the SME businesses in the Netherlands, mainly in the Netherlands. So our typical merchant base, 3/4 of that 35,000 merchants consist of your local butcher, your hairdresser. So those are the type of clients that we service. The focus is mainly on low risk merchants. That's our focus.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. And now let's give the applause. Yes. All right. Thanks. Then one brief note about Holland Fintech for some of the new faces that we have here. Holland Fintech is an association for organizations that work in financial services and are working on innovation one way or the other. So that means that we actually work with young startups, scale-ups, but also incumbent players that are already a dominant name for a very long time. Because what basically is happening, what's happening in fintech is that there's just an explosion of players in the landscape because we could actually, since let's say 1 decade, we're able to work together digitally through APIs, and with also the rise of smartphones, we're able to just do much more for customers in collaboration between each other. And because of that, there's a Cambrian explosion of organizations and companies and solutions you can work with. And we try to help everyone navigate that complex landscape and offer opportunities to collaborate between all these parties. That's what we're trying to do, and events like these are some of the ways of doing that, where we can hopefully educate a little bit about what's going on in the field, as well as hopefully establish some useful connections between all of you. If you want to know more about that, of course, happy to talk to one of my colleagues or look at our website where you can find more information. Then, our monthly wrap-up. So we look back now at February, which was actually quite an eventful month. And most of the news actually you can also find in our weekly newsletter. Every Friday we send out a global fintech update, which basically covers the latest news update, the last funding rounds, interesting research reports, or opinion pieces from thought leaders that might be worthwhile. So if you haven't subscribed to that yet, please check out hollandfintech.com, our website, to sign up. And let's have a look now at actually what happened in February. It's interesting to actually see, I mean, there's a very big war going on e-wallets already, where you see, of course, Apple Pay is very dominant. Google's trying to follow that with GPay. But also you see that some of the banks in America are now actually also trying to establish their own wallet solution to compete with that. That's quite interesting to see actually that some of the bigger banks in America put their forces behind it. Really curious how that will play out, especially since very often when you talk about the technology to use these solutions, you actually still end up with the big tech firms that could actually play a big role in keeping these parties out. But I think this also fits well in the fact that most of the competition authorities are very keen on fighting back on the big tech firms and their relatively monopolistic positions. Interesting development in Romania, where they actually launched an app for people to pay their taxes and really establish a very strong relationship with the government. And I think I always like these kind of examples because I think especially in the Dutch market we're pretty underserved with regard to digital solutions from our government. Right? I think most of our digital identity is not really done yet. I mean, the tax applications are so-so, but also quite a lot of challenges there, I think, to get that done properly. So I always like it when also countries that are sometimes from this end of Europe seen as running behind could actually take a big leap forward in doing something nice like this. Interesting one as well. I mean, crypto has been a very challenging environment for the past year, but still you see that there's a big belief in that crypto can play a big role in financial services one way or the other. And you see, for example, that the UK is picking on that to say, okay, after Brexit, the UK is sort of trying to reinvent their position in the financial world, and they think that being a big crypto hub could play a big role in that. So they're really putting their forces behind that to say, okay, let's create a really, not per se very easy, but at least a very clear and understandable crypto regulatory landscape, so we can attract companies on that basis. An interesting one as well is that in Finland now we have the first EU stablecoin that's been regulated, doing quite well at the moment. Of course, over the past year we've seen a lot of failures of stablecoins or the parties that were investing in that. A lot of scams in the crypto world. So I think it's quite interesting to see that actually the EU now is actually starting up with regulated crypto stablecoins to experiment whether their infrastructure behind crypto, which in many cases is actually also non-European, right? We rely a lot on non-European players for that. That actually also more of that is actually coming to the European market. Let's see where we. ChatGPT, of course, is the highlight of each day. I mean, everyone's been talking about that, how cool it is, and what you can do with it. That kids at school have nothing to do anymore because they can let it all be done by ChatGPT. Well, it's basically been sort of framed as the big war of the conversational AI, like ChatGPT. And you see that now Microsoft has made a big investment in that, so they basically pulled ChatGPT in their direction. And you see now immediately a counter move by Google that invested in Anthropic to basically come up with a similar solution. And especially this is also important because very often ChatGPT has been framed as a Google killer, as in this is a new kind of tool that could actually make the whole search that Google does obsolete. Well, you can of course then anticipate that something like this would happen, that they would actually try to invest in that and sort of anticipate it. It's again one of those things where I also like to warn a bit that we might get over-enthusiastic for a solution like that, like we did with crypto at the beginning and the internet at the beginning, and all the time usually we get over-enthusiastic. Everyone thinks the world is going to be completely different after technology. Well, unfortunately, usually the world doesn't change that quick, and we revert back to things as usual with a slight adaptation. And this is also where I think now we're also seeing a bit more skeptical stories about, for example, ChatGPT, where we also know that some of the things that the chatbots produce are not to be relied on, right? So they're really easily written, but they're not always true. So you need to, for example, validate all the information that you get from a program. And in that sense, it's definitely not a replacement for Google just yet, right? Okay, also interesting from the payment perspective, Twitter is applying for a license. We know, of course, that Elon Musk, heavily scrutinized for the way he's dealing with Twitter, is also looking for ways to make more money. And also one of the ways is actually to look at the payment infrastructure. And this fits well in a trend that actually a lot of non-financial tech companies are actually starting to develop their own fintech department. So you see that, of course, in the likes of Booking.com and other marketplaces, where they are actually developing their own payment capabilities, looking for identity tooling, looking for financing options, and setting up their own shop for that. It's really interesting, so they're pulling it all in-house. One of the things we try to also highlight at Amsterdam Fintech Week in September, where we actually especially want to also focus on these kind of companies, how they are actually also looking at the developments in the fintech space. Well, the regulatory sandbox for blockchain, I think it's something I'm really curious what that's going to come out of that, because the EU is still very hyped up about blockchain, while at the same time you see that the market's actually a bit slowing down. But there might be some interesting developments there on that level, and I think it will mostly be related to the digital euro. This is one of the big projects where the EU is really, and also the ECB is really pushing for to actually come up with a stable coin issued by the central bank. And I think that might also be one of the cases why they want to focus on this blockchain project. Last year we've seen, of course, that the valuations all soared down and all companies had to focus on profitability. Well, it's good to see that Bank actually managed to do that, right? So they made a good profit in the fourth quarter. And I think it's one of the bigger trends that we'll see now from now going forward, that a lot of companies will report a profit that were before burning money like crazy because money was freely available and growth was the only thing that mattered. Now profitability is the only thing that matters, because no one is certain that your next funding round will succeed. So you need to make your own money, otherwise you might go bust. And Banks in any case on the right hand side of that, so that's a nice development. And one other thing that's definitely not the most sexy news out there, but it's interesting to see that the European Central Bank starts to worry about the digital transformation strategies of the incumbent players. So they begin to get very worried, and I think we've seen this trend earlier, for example, with MAS in Singapore, who actually at some point said, okay, forget about it. You don't have to think about it. We'll give you the technology, and you just have to adopt. It's never going to be that hard, I think, here in Europe. But you do see now that after quite some incentives that were issued for banks to get rid of their legacy systems and to go further into transformation, the European Central Bank is really worried now that actually some of these things might not go well enough. And especially there, I think there's always an interesting challenge, I think, in the market where on one hand, relying on legacy technology is a big risk, because at some point you might not be able to maintain it, and things might go bust. On the other hand, you see as well that all transitions that you do go under personal liability very often of the board members of these institutions. So they're actually not willing to pull the switch, to flip the switch and say, okay, let's go to a cloud-based solution, because if it goes wrong, you go to jail basically. So it's a bit of a harsh contradiction there, and I think that from that perspective it's good, I think, that the ECB is looking more into the processes around it, because they also give a bit of a dual signal there, I think, from that perspective. And of course we have to remember as well that a lot of the central banks actually until a couple of years back wouldn't have to do anything with the cloud, for example, right? They wouldn't allow you to actually work in the cloud. Well, how can you then actually go into digital transformation if you're not even allowed to use cloud solutions? So I'm really curious how does this all evolve. And this of course also fits a bit in the light of DORA, the recent regulation for digital and operational resilience that was issued by the European Committee. Any questions about this? Anything you miss? Curious if anyone read something that they said, hey, but wait a minute, this happens as well. Yep.
Just to clarify, because I'm new to the space and the country, you're saying that the European Central Bank is worrying that the digital transformation is not going quickly enough?
Yeah, so I think that they actually are, they're worried, I think, about the process about it. They actually mentioned in this article as well that they want to do site visits to check up on how the systems are and the processes are running. So I think it's mostly a worry about the transitions that most of these parties are going through, and I think it's mostly about not going fast enough, which I think is understandable, because for the rest all the focus is just on AML and KYC, which has, is mostly throwing consultants at transactions rather than rethinking the processes in your organization.
And speed is important because why?
So in the end, I think we rely a lot on incumbent players for stability in the whole ecosystem. Yeah. And so if at some point the incumbent players fail, there's trouble for everyone, including all the upcoming players. And so what you see is that basically if they don't adapt quick enough, they will basically lose business, and they run a risk, because at some point the steam engine will stop at some point. Yeah.
This is a relevant question. The Delamar Theatre, that's the one that's by the Leidseplein, right? The Delamar.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I
for
say
the
that.
update.
Exactly. Yeah. You mentioned Bunk. Bunk has an event next Tuesday evening at 7:30 at the Delamar Theatre, and you can go to the same platform you use to sign up for these events, namely Eventbrite, and then search for Bunk. And again, it's in the theater. It's some announcement. They won't tell you what it is.
It's sold out. Actually, but you can follow it online.
So, well, I have my ticket. Okay, sorry. So okay. Well, sorry, I really didn't mean to rub it in. I thought they'd still be available, but anyway.
So you have the ticket?
Yeah, no, I
think you can do something.
Yeah, I might scalp it. Put it on StepUp or something. But, or you can ask me next time how it went.
I think this is a nice one. It's a nice message. They do every quarter or every couple of months. They do an update on all the development progress that they made and new features that they launched and such. And they do it like Steve Jobs-like presentation, and Apple is how then Ali is taking the stage and sort of hyping everyone up about the things that were developed. Quite an interesting thing, I think. Indeed, this was, I think, already 22nd or 23rd update, and they're very popular. And so, yeah, I would definitely recommend you to check one out, and you can also do that online. So there is a way to actually follow it online.
Yeah, go to Eventbrite and of course follow Bunk, and then the site will then warn you. Hopefully in time when the next one comes around after this one. So.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. Shall we continue? Oh yeah, so I have some more. So, just on the largest funding rounds last month, I'll keep it a bit brief. Right, so here we see that actually still, even though there's quite some worry about the investment landscape, we still quite some serious amounts being invested across the globe in digital banking, car investment, neobanks. So I think that's quite interesting to see that there's quite a lot of money still available apparently in these in the market. But it has definitely become a bit harder compared to to last year. Here we see also in the Dutch market some funding rounds were done with Twinkle Capital, VEF and Staxer picking up some money, which I think is also quite a nice one to actually see that also in the Dutch market the investment rounds always a bit more modest than on the American scale, but it's good that in any case the money keeps on flowing. Then I think we had two. So we also, from the research reports, we try to take something that's interesting. Here it's interesting, of course, generative AI with like OpenAI, ChatGPT, as we were just talking about. The expectation is here that the deal value was a bit lower in 22, but we expect that to actually go sky high this year because now everything is loose. So it's interesting to keep an eye out on the developments there. And it was funny to actually see that last year was a bit of a downfall, but it has to do with the fact that actually also we saw that in general VC terms that actually the line goes like this and then except 21 which was sort of a strange spike, and I think that's also why we have to look at this apparent decline. It's actually about a growth like this, where this was just a funny year where there was some crazy money spent on a lot of deals. Yeah, this is also an interesting one, of course. Over the past year we've been surprised by the number of frauds in crypto. And this website, coinjournal.net, actually keeps track of that. So it's interesting to see also the number of crypto frauds there. If you're interested in this space, definitely keep track of this website. I'd like to wrap it up with that. And
Yes.
hand the mic. I'm not sure if we actually should give you a mic.
I have this thing.
Oh, you have your thing. Okay, great.
That's for
Yeah.
the recording.
Yeah.
For the recording, you're recording me. Good to know.
We won't send it to the central bank.
Okay, so guys, we're on a very tight schedule. I have 8 minutes to tell you guys something about ERP. And we all need to make that schedule, otherwise the bitterballen will go cold at 5:30. So I don't want to be responsible for that. So let's start. ERP systems. So when I was asked to give a presentation on the ERP systems, I really had to think about from which angle am I going to give this presentation. Am I going to present my viewpoint as a CFO in payments, or what would be the right angle to give the presentation? And I actually thought about it, and when I started my career I worked for 10 years first as an auditor, and I was responsible for financial statement audits at PwC, but I also did a lot of IT audits. So I saw a lot of ERP systems in detail in different industries, but also in different sizes. So I saw ERP systems in mid-sized companies, but also at big stock-listed companies. So what I'll try to do in 8 minutes is share my personal experiences of what I learned from my experience as an auditor, as a public auditor. But I will also share my experiences as an auditor in business, as I am today. I will also briefly touch on the importance of the strategy of a company when it comes to the choice of implementing an ERP system, whether you implement it or not, and if you do implement it, which system to choose, and why it's important to consider the impact on the organization. And finally, I will also touch brief on the role of management in this entire process and why that role is key. So let's start. I will first start with a boring slide about enterprise resource planning. Just to go back to the theory, what is an enterprise resource planning system? So the way it was first explained to me years ago, is an enterprise resource system is nothing else than a system with a central data repository to which different modules are connected through an automated interface, and in this database all the information from the different applications are being collected and grouped based on a certain logic. So all the data is being met in the central database. It becomes information, and you can access, and management and stakeholder can access this information to reporting applications. So that's in a nutshell what an ERP system is. In reality, what I've seen from ERP implementations of my clients in the past is that ERP implementations often are very costly. They run out of time. They take usually a bit longer than they were planned for. They're usually, in that sense, also more costly. And the deliverable is not always in line with what the stakeholders expected from the implementation. And there are many reasons for why this happens, but from my own experience, the top three reasons are that ERP systems in the basis are very complex. It's very complex. So before you start on an ERP implementation, you need to be absolutely certain if it's a good fit for your company. The other part is also that people tend to forget that an ERP system, it works based on a certain logic. And when you apply this logic in your company, that means that you might have to change your business processes to fit that logic. And when you change business processes, you change on workflows of individuals. So there's also a very strong change component when it comes to ERP implementations. And then finally, the third one is quite a funny one, because this is something that I encountered in my former job, is that we were trying to implement an ERP system in Europe for 14 operating companies spread across Europe. And the local managing directors, they were convinced that implementing the ERP system was not possible in their region, because they had certain tweaks and certain nudges that they needed in the system, and if they would not get it, they would lose the competitive advantage. So that is also one of the things that you need to consider when it comes to implementing ERP systems. So it happens very often that the company starts very enthusiastically with an ERP implementation. They have 10 companies, and then in the end they only implement it at 6 because there are 4 companies, usually the France one or the German ones, that say, not possible, our market is totally different. The Dutch people, you don't know what you're talking about. It's totally different over here. It's not going to work. So you see a lot of people laughing, so there is some recognition there. So 3 more things that I promised you guys that I will talk about, my personal experience. So what I learned from reality in the prior picture, I showed you a picture where you have one central database, one data repository. So from my experience, the single data repository is not a reality in practice. In reality, you usually have a company that has maybe 12 systems. And all these systems, they serve a very important business function and support important operational processes. In that sense, they are very important. But in the end, all these systems combined, they represent legacy. And this legacy can be a very big drag on productivity in a company, but also on, how do you say that, performance of the company. So I see again a lot of people nodding there. So I'm not saying strange things, AD. And when I became CFO of EMS, I also became responsible for the business intelligence team. I actually see the manager in the back. He's hiding from me. And what I also learned from Herman, from experience, is that maintaining all these data flows from different systems is a very complex process. Because each time when the system gets an update, you need to make sure that the linkages between all the different systems works well together. So in some cases, in extreme cases, that means that you have to rewrite the code to keep everything else working and everything going. So there's a very tangible direct cost of not having the fairy tale single ERP system. But there's also an indirect cost attached to it. And the indirect cost is you don't have access to real-time data. So for example, if you, in a company as a manager, an executive, you need to make a strategic commercial decision. And you will in reality most often take it based on gut feeling or on instinct. Because compiling all the data from all the different systems takes time. And you usually don't have the time to take take the decision. So that's also one of the things that I encountered in reality. So to summarize this part, to put it bluntly, if in my opinion, if your IT landscape is fragmented, in most cases your decision-making processes in the company are also a reflection of that. Industry is that the tech giants are very, and Don also touched briefly on that in his introduction, they're all busy streamlining their systems and their IT landscape. And that's very much happening now. But the concern that I observe and have is that whilst they're doing that, they opt to work for these agile, small IT companies, mid-sized IT companies that are not established players yet. And this is when I put my auditor's hat back on. If I implement an ERP system from one of these very agile, smart, smaller IT companies, do I have assurance that the system will work the way it should work? Do I have assurance regarding the completeness and the accuracy of the data processing in that system? And this is something in our heavily regulated industry, it's a very important thing that you need to know. Because every company in our industry, for sure you have every year you're being audited, you need to have audited financial statements. The first thing an auditor will do is focus on all critical systems and check in whether there is an assurance report. I'm over time, sorry. Do I need to stop talking now? I will wrap this up. Okay. So that's one of my main concerns that I currently have, because this is also something that the Dutch regulator, as Don also explained, is focusing on, and they already announced that they're going to start auditing that also at companies. So be mindful if you consider implementing an ERP system in your company, be mindful of which parties you work with, and if they are able to give you assurance on the reports. So I'm quickly moving on to strategy, and I will, sorry Sylvia, I will keep it very brief. So when it comes to the selection of an ERP system, the way I see it, whether you go for an ERP system or not, fully depends on how heavily you rely on the speed of the data, the information flows in your company. So if you, for example, are a company that finds it very important to have the perfect customer service experience, you might be depending on the data flow, and it might be important to have a fully integrated ERP system. But if you as a company in the market are differentiating yourself based on price, you can offer the lowest price in the market, it might not be interesting for you to go for an ERP system that might cost millions, because in that way you lose your competitive edge, right? But in all cases, what I do want to stress is that if you do opt for an ERP system and a solution like this, be mindful that you're applying, you're choosing for a generic solution. Because in practice, if you choose to implement an ERP system and you decide to do your own tweaks and your own, in Dutch you say maatwerk, that's usually very, very costly and very pricey. So the organization part I want to tell is a bit of a history lesson, and I don't want to sound like a lecturer now, but a fun fact, ERP systems were first implemented in Europe and later on in America. And there's a main reason for that. European countries have a more hierarchical way of working and a more central management approach in companies. And what ERP system does, it democratizes data, and it makes it more available for a broader audience. That means that that the organizations can be flatter. That's all I will say about it. So when it comes to the role of management, I'm doing my best, Sylvia. When it comes to the role of management, the thing that I do want to stress here is that what I've learned from ERP implementations in the past is that executives usually tend to see ERP implementations as a task of the IT team, of the tech team. And this is a great misconception, because ERP implementations, they touch base on your company culture, they touch base on your company strategy. So it needs to be, if you want to do an ERP implementation well, you need to put the enterprise first, do your due diligence, and the ERP system second. That's it. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Okay. Then, yours. Where are you? Yeah, no, make sure you're...
Thank you, Holland Fintech for the opportunity.
Yeah, let's give you all a big hand to start with.
Thank you EMS as well. It feels a bit like coming home for me, to be fair. You know, back in 2015 when I started my payments career, I started at First Data. And I started at First Data in Basildon, so it was for me my first job abroad. I'm Dutch originally, so I lived in close by Amsterdam. My first job abroad. I was the go-to at First Data for all kind of questions they had around the Dutch market. But first, hands up. Everybody ever heard of First Data? Whoever? Yeah? They're now called Fiserv, but any? Yeah. The name is not really well known. So some people ever traveled to Basildon? Yeah, enjoyed it. It's a nice the place to be. I was basically in charge for all the questions people from Basildon had around the Dutch market. So I got questions like, why does coffee in Amsterdam cost 25 euros? Or why is this service not legal, but not illegal at the same time in the Netherlands? A lot of interesting questions are answered from that point of view, being basically the go-to for the Dutch market. I started at risk. My main focus always been credit risk, and at the time I extended my business, my knowledge levels to like AML, regulatory compliance, and scheme compliance. A quick example I learned that regulatory compliance is not just only following the law, right? It's much more than that, and it's experience from my personal level. So now we'll go to the next slide and read a bit about my company. But as a lot of people maybe know, I'm a marathon runner. I'm a fanatic marathon runner. I run over 12 half marathons last year. And one of the first things I did after I moved to Basildon was looking at Amazon. I want to buy running stuff. So I wanted loads of running stuff. It arrived the day after. And as a lot of people of you know, probably buying something on Amazon as well, they have this nice algorithm. They offer you things that fall in line with the products you ordered before. And in this case, I was quite bemused about it. They offered me fake urine. Anybody has a clue why would you use fake urine? Yeah, probably, right? For a drug test or anything. Well then, pregnancy test. But fake urine, if you look at the letter of the law, it's not legal and it's not illegal, right? It's legal. It's a product, you can buy it, but as a compliance officer, would you be comfortable supporting this product, knowing what your audience wants to do with this product, which is basically probably we always need to be careful with saying things, breaking the law, right? So that's saying that compliance is much more than just following rules and regulations. It's also about creating your own risk appetite and what you're comfortable with as a compliance officer or what you're not comfortable with. Skipping a few years, worked in Amsterdam, worked in London for payment facilitators, for acquiring banks, emerging record setup. I founded my own company, JGR Risk and Compliance Consulting. Mainly active regulatory compliance, AML coaching, improving your KYC, KYB onboarding journey. That's the main items I am active in. Good. My main belief when it comes to risk management is that every risk could be turned into an opportunity for the business, and that is how I mainly create value for my partners and the companies I work with. The connection with operational risk register and enterprise resource planning, for example. You can see it on this slide. From drafting the risk appetite, going to the risk scenario drafting in the risk register, to defining the strategy. It could be avoid, it could be mitigate, or outsource. And mitigate is one of my preferred strategies to go for. It starts with a risk appetite, defined by the business. It gives the framework which the business allows itself to operate in. And I always recommend my clients to start with like a 4-hour workshop. Sounds long, but sit down with everyone together and make sure we're all aligned on the risk appetite, if that makes sense. Keeping the operational risk register up to date, in line with your enterprise resource planning, is the biggest challenge. Some tips and tricks. Keeping regular meetings with the stakeholders about the risk elements. Ask the owners, the business owners, to update their risk on a quarterly basis and show best practices during the meetings. Where possible, always try to quantify the risk. Give a certain risk score. But further in the presentation, I will go further on that. The partners I work with to mitigate the risk is one of them is Fellow. They call the air traffic controllers for payments, and as a lot of people know, the payments landscape for travel merchants is a bit of a minefield at the moment. There are acquiring banks, issuing banks, insurance companies, payment service providers, schemes. Who is taking the liability if things going wrong? Everybody is pointing towards each other, right? Fellow, democratizing, to use one of your words, Sharisa, the data in travel payments. And they're basically providing a platform. There's 3 options. Or the payment is secured by an ATOL scheme or another scheme like SDR in the Netherlands. Or there's an insurance policy under it. Or the consumer enjoys the trip. Basically, with my partner Fellow, I can turn a risk in the risk register from unacceptable to like giving the business a tool to start pitching on travel agents. So I like to say I switch risk into an opportunity for the business that creates more business coming in and helps the credit department to focus on other things, the risk department, because this travel agent that maybe has an iffy financial profile, the risk is almost fully mitigated. Never completely full, but let's say 90%. Another partner I work with that I'm really proud of is Goat Risk Solutions, and they automate basically the risk, operational risk scorecard, and basically give you the opportunity to give a score to every risk you have within the organization. Press a button and the board gets a top 10 of your risks that you're facing within your organization, which is really important for the board to have, right? Plus the strategy, plus the progress you make on the strategy. So the board can send a message out to all the stakeholders like, oh, risk number 3, what is the plan? What are we going to do moving forward? Standard Fusion is one of my other partners. They basically provide a platform that you can store your full policy house to make sure that everybody uses the same set of the policy house, which is really important if you work for a regulated, even for a non-regulated financial institution. Good. The main point is that it's really important to work with partners, and I'm really a big fan of working with partners because every partner adds their own value on the table. I can be the glue in between you and the partners that you want to connect with. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. I'm connected with loads more partners. Mainly focused on turning risk into a business opportunity and helping your business generate more revenue and helping your compliance team and your risk team to focus on the things that actually matter to your organization. Good. Questions? I see the time was over, exactly within the 8 minutes.
Great. Thanks. Let's give you a big hand. Yeah. Okay. I saw one question already. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm interested in what are the things that are between legal and illegal within the UK?
Well, for example, when you look at the Dutch market and card acquiring, and I was quite here, I was pointing at it already for €25 coffee. that is not a coffee the cardholder buys, right, for 25 euros. And it is, how you say it, it's a Dutch word, gedoogd.
Yeah.
Basically you cannot buy it, right, but you can sell it.
Only sold to bakeries. So we think kids can still buy it, so we don't want you as a customer. And we know that our central bank is going to hold us accountable for this, even though we're not a law enforcement agency. The financial industry is being used as an indirect law enforcement agency in that sense.
And are you also responsible for your customer's customer, right?
Exactly.
That is a big question that's now in the DNB as well, and a lot of publications are published around it recently, actually.
Yeah.
And it falls down as well on your risk appetite, right? What is your risk appetite when it comes to fake urine, for example? Knowing that someone is buying it, you know, what he's going to do with it, right? It's probably something that could not really resist any daylight. And do you want to support that as a reputable financial institution? That's a question you should ask yourself.
Yeah, and I think that one of the challenges here as well, if you talk about back to the data side, is how can you know, right?
Exactly.
And so what do you need to do? How much effort should you make?
Yeah.
Because it's not affordable to know everything.
Exactly.
But how much should you spend?
Yeah. And is your process and procedure solid that you catch 99% of the cases, right? Or less, that's within your risk appetite.
Well, Holland Fintech, thanks for having me, and yeah, glad to be here. So first of all, I want to start with asking you some questions. Has every one of you heard of PayHawk? Is there somebody that, yeah?
Well, I know the founders are Bulgarian, so it's really easy to say.
Yeah, that's true. We are the first Bulgarian unicorn.
You hosted us 2 months ago or something, right?
That's true as well. Yeah, we hosted also in Holland Fintech. Second question: how many of you are working in the finance department? Yeah, I know, CFO. And what's your role? Ah, nice. Well, in view this is interesting, but for the rest as well. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the pitch about PayHawk and how do we respond to the challenges within the finance market. So, first of all, short introduction about myself, why I believe in PayHawk, history of PayHawk, the challenges in the finance market, and last but not least, what is PayHawk? Maybe the most important question. So my name is Phil Jansen, I'm a spend management consultant, 31 years old, and I work for PayHawk. And I believe in PayHawk. I work for PayHawk because I believe that our platform can help organizations increase digitalization and increase efficiency within the finance department. So a little bit about the history of PayHawk. Back in 2018, our current CEO, Mr. Borisov, started the company PayHawk. PayHawk is an all-in-one payment and expense management platform. And with the platform, we respond to the 4 biggest market criteria in the field of expense at that moment. The first of all is classic expense management. This is where people prepare spend reports. The second one is corporate cards, debit cards, credit cards, payment methods. This was all exclusive business of exclusive domain of banks. Secondly, then you have the ERP integrations. I think almost every company is working with account package or an ERP system. And approval process that finance team must perform, including accounting, data retrieval, and so on. And then, last but not least, the world of bill payments and bank transfers. Who are my suppliers? Do I trust them? Do I trust their bank accounts? How can I make transfers and payments? And this means that at the end of the day, all you have is disconnected experience. And then we saw this challenge. We saw that finance teams are forced to manage company cards, payments, expenses, and out-of-pocket cash in multiple disconnected systems without the ability to stay in control and have real-time visibility. And that is where we step in as PayHawk. So, what is PayHawk? PayHawk is the next generation financial system that combines company cards, possibility to order payments, expenses, cash management, pre-accounting in one integrated experience to help companies to be in control. So basically you can automate manual processes, maximize efficiency and accelerate business expansion. And we all have it managed in one system. Also, Payhawk is known for their capability to connect with ERP systems. So like Exact is one of our partners, NetSuite, Dynamics, QuickBooks and SAP. With this you have an all-in-one expense management tool, including payment cards and an integration with your ERP system. Secondly, from the Payhawk owners, the vision is to make companies paperless and cashless, what means and more efficient. What also means that we work, we are working to get our B Corp certificate, and we are based. Our customers are small, fast-growing companies, but also multinationals. We are based in New York, London, Paris, Barcelona, Amsterdam, Berlin, and Sofia, and we are also backed by some renewed investors. I think last year we reached a Series B funding of 250 or 300 million euros, and 70 to 80% is going directly into the platform. So this is how we are trying to stay on top of the market. So you want to know more about if we as Payhawk can help your organization increase efficiency. Join me at the drinks, and thanks for your time.
Get ready for the last pitch. All right, Jos and Jesse, sitting standby already.
Thank you.
You ready for it?
Yes.
You want the clicker? All right, let's give them a big hand, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here and here to listen to our story.
Yeah.
We're from SBR Nexus, and SBR stands for Standard Business Reporting. And then the big question is, who are we?
Well, I'm Jos Eveleens. I'm working as product owner for the business data part of SBR. And well, we are working in a team of 6, and Jesse is
One of them.
one of them.
I'm Jesse Jonker, and I'm the project manager within the business data team with Jos.
Yeah. Well, actually, we are a company owned by the 3 big banks, well, as you see, we are there for be there in a leading role for developing, maintaining, and exchanging market standards. Well, we exist for 10 years now.
Yeah. And what it stands here is SBR Nexus enables companies to exchange business data system to system. In addition, SBR Nexus provides substantive support to the entire chain, which means banks, service providers, entrepreneurs, and software vendors in the implementation and use of agreed market standards.
Yeah. Well, what do we have then? We see challenges in the financial market, growing digital economy, and then we have to exchange data between companies and banks, and we can do that with. We can do it in the right way when we know for sure that data is from a high quality.
Yes, and what companies see now is that you have to deal with laws or regulations or regulators that are making increasingly higher demands, but also collecting up to date data and reliable business data is becoming increasingly urgent nowadays. And organizations receive unstructured and non-standardized documents that can only be processed and analyzed with high processing costs. So that means also with employees, of course.
Yeah, we can reduce the work. We've got a lot of people in the Netherlands just taking over reports now at the banks, and well, when we standardize it, we don't need that work anymore.
And no more mistakes.
Also that.
So what do we offer then? Well, we offer the market standards in the business, but also for KYC and real estate data. Sustainability is coming. We have an infrastructure where the data goes from A to B, of course.
And of course, all banks, service providers, entrepreneurs, and software suppliers can call us, and we will help them to implement the SPR standard in their systems.
Yeah.
Actually, we've got four standards working at this moment. The biggest one is the financial statement. These are the figures of the companies reported to the banks and which can be transferred from the accountant directly to the bank and go into the system. Then we have got the valuation report. Every company which will finance a building or a house or the validation report goes directly to the systems of the bank. The same with the rental information for commercial rentals. Every company can just put it directly into the systems of the bank. And we just started with KYC taxonomy, and it fills. Where are you? It fills the market. Every company has its KYC flow to the bank, and we are now building a portal where it can go directly from the portal of your company directly to the bank, and it will go into the systems of the bank. And our fifth one we are developing now is the sustainability, and then every company has to report his status of sustainability to the bank, and we can do that directly as well.
And this is our network. So that what we already said, like our members are the big banks from the Netherlands, so ABN AMRO, ING, Rabo. Our service providers are our accountants and administrators.
Yeah.
So we have big accountancy.
Well, actually, we are talking with the big interest groups, which are the group organizations, and they are implementing our system now. So it will be the standard now in the market, and we believe in 2024-25 it will be. There's no other way of deliver your data to the banks. So that are we building now with the software suppliers and for our clients.
Yes.
So
we believe in easy and securely data sharing with the aim of helping banks and their business customers to become successful in the digital world. And of course, our question is also: is your company SPR proof? And if not,
do we already have a score? Do you have it? Okay. And do we have to? Then I'd like to ask Shaisa to come forward, because you were appreciated most at your warm drinks, cold drinks, whatever you like. But, hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much, and of course, again, another applause for hosting us here. Very much.
Already.
So whenever you are ready. Okay, then we're going to speed things up. Just to know about our upcoming events, we're going to do a joint session for our members at Money 2020. So please join that if you want on the 14th of March. We have an investor startup matchmaking event on the 16th of March, and another event, Member Insights, on the 4th of April. And of course our next meetup coming up on the 13th of April. So coming up pretty soon. Look forward to see you all again there next time. And of course, but you already know how many days it is, Amsterdam Fintech Week is coming up in 187 days. So looking forward to see you all there. Thank you very much.